in Unit 2, Lesson 11, compare text in a similar genre. So we did compare and contrast text in different formats yesterday. This will be similar formats, but and similar genres as well. So by the time we complete the lesson today, we will be able to identify the similarities and differences in authors' tones, which we've looked at before, analyze each author's purpose, analyze the style of each text, and evaluate the effectiveness of each text or of a text. So, sort of combining those lessons we've been working on, whether style and tone, identifying a purpose, all of that, now comparing two texts and evaluating each. Let's take a look here at our audio. Okay, here we go.
When you compare and contrast texts in similar genres, begin by thinking about each author's perspective and tone. How are they similar or different? Then determine what each author is trying to achieve. Analyze how the structure of the text and author's style further his or her purpose. For example, does the author compare and contrast concepts or use specific rhetorical techniques? Finally, evaluate the overall impact or effectiveness of each text in regard to each author's purpose. Does each author achieve his or her purpose using the identified techniques?
So, first thing here, if you're not familiar with genre, right? Genre is just a type or things with similar characteristics. So we hear it applied to, like, what's your favorite genre of television show? Like, oh, that's, science fiction and fantasy, right? Or same thing. What's your favorite genre of books, or what's your favorite genre of music? I like, whatever it may be, rap, top 40, country. Those are all genres. It's a specific type. So we're going to see, similar genres. People writing about a similar subject or in a similar way, but we're going to compare, or we're going to evaluate their individual style, their effectiveness. And this is one of those lessons, again, that's going to be important when it comes to your writing response, because now this is exactly what you're going to see: similar genres, and you're going to look at each one and evaluate them. Okay, so let's take a look here. So to start with, genre. So nomination address from Franklin Roosevelt in 1932, and the nomination address from John F. Kennedy in 1960. So once they were nominated for the as the Democrat candidate for president, right? They have those Democratic conventions, right? They have the Republican convention where they officially nominate, after the primary elections, their candidate to run in the presidential election. So this, in this case, this is when FDR received his nomination and when JFK received his in 1960. I'll go ahead and read the text box here. First says Roosevelt repeats similar or parallel sentence structure to emphasize the importance of work and security at a time when many were unemployed and had lost their savings, right? So look for that parallelism, look for, those types of sentence structures here as I read. And the title, right, is Franklin D. Roosevelt's nomination address. So what do the people of America want more than anything else? To my mind, they want two things: work with all the moral and spiritual values that go with it, and with work, a reasonable measure of security for themselves and for their wives and children. Work and security, these are more than words. They are more than facts. They are the spiritual values, the true goal toward which our efforts of reconstruction should lead. These are the values that this program is intended to gain. Okay. And then looking at Kennedy, it says Kennedy contrasts government programs to highlight his approach to governance. He contrasts the word promise with the word challenge to emphasize that he looks toward the future. Let's see how he goes about that. So Woodrow Wilson's New Freedom promised our nation a new political and economic framework. Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal promised security and succor to those in need. But the new frontier of which I speak is not a set of promises. It is a set of challenges. It sums up not what I intend to offer to the American people, but what I intend to ask of them. It appeals to their pride. It appeals to our pride, not our security. It holds out the promise of more sacrifice instead of more security. Okay, so let's take a look here at the quiz. Okay. And so sometimes you can make assumptions about the importance of what an author does not say. If authors do not mention something, they may believe it is significant to their audience, or it's insignificant to their audience, right? If they're not formalizing something in words, if they're not communicating it, it must not be significant. That's an assumption you can make. Let's see, Tracy, would you mind reading question 1?
Yes. Which statement best explains the author's perspective? A. Both author believe that the American people have been unwilling to contribute to the success of the nation. B. Roosevelt believes that people need trust and security, but Kennedy assumed that people had the and can move forward. C. Both authors believe that American people had to work and contribute more to build a strong security society. D. Roosevelt believes that government should provide security, but Kennedy believed that the American people must work for security. A.
So it's B. B as in boy. If you look what they're saying there, right, when Kennedy mentions Roosevelt and Wilson, right, Wilson's New Freedom promised nation a new political and economic framework. Roosevelt's New Deal promised security and support to those in need. So those challenges have been met, is what he's saying there, right? That now there's a new frontier. We've secured these other things for our citizens. We need to look at to moving forward, and that's really kind of explains what their two perspectives. Roosevelt's, on the other hand, at a time of the Great Depression, they needed the American people were looking for security. They were looking for jobs. They were, worried about their future. Kennedy is stressing that now we can think about our future because those needs have been taken care of. Generally speaking, right? Not that there wasn't still work to be done. So B as in boy for 1. And we got a drag and drop activity here. So a Venn diagram, if it pops up for me. Come on, Venn diagram. Well, maybe if I click on something. Okay, there it goes. So our Venn diagram, Roosevelt, right? Characteristics from his speech over here in the 3 on the left, and then Kennedy 3 on the right. And then what did they share, right? In the middle of that Venn diagram, what did they both have in common? So the idea here, drag and drop the items into the correct location on the Venn diagram. So let's just read through each one, and we'll just, we got a bunch here. We'll just pick each one and slide it into the right place. So thinking about the structure, was it Roosevelt, Kennedy, or both of them implied a comparison with the pioneer spirit? It is hard to scroll down. We've run into this before, Nelda. If you can zoom out your screen, it might make it a little easier, might make things kind of small to read, but it might help you drag and drop. Yeah, these things are not easy unless you got a like a computer, like a laptop, where you're using a mouse.
Well, with mine, I do it's like a desktop view because I'm on my phone, and it has an option to do like a desktop view, and that works better for me. Like it basically looks how it does on a computer.
I got you. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, if you could do that, try that, it might help. Okay, so let's take a look here. So structure. So implied comparison with pioneer spirit. Who used that?
Roosevelt.
So it is Kennedy. So he said, right, he mentions a, what does he say? A new frontier, right? So thinking about a frontier, right? That's the realm of a pioneer, right? So, but the new frontier of which I speak is not a set of promises, it's a set of challenges. So a pioneering spirit is largely Kennedy's, right? So we'll drag and drop implied comparison with pioneer spirit over to Kennedy. And then the next one is structure again. So, no, it's not, it's perspective. So federal government must lead in areas of technology, foreign relations, and human rights. Who stresses that?
Roosevelt.
That's Kennedy again. Yeah, it says, his is real short, but, so you have to make some sort of, you have to use some inferences here, but this kind of goes along with sort of that idea that we know about Kennedy and the time frame, right? That, it's up to the United States to lead the world, and particularly in these ideas. So, and again, you have to think about the time frame, right? So Roosevelt is getting elected during the Great Depression. Kennedy is getting elected amidst the Cold War, where the United States is now the world leader, right? It is one of basically two superpowers, and one of the, well, at the time, really, one of the most influential countries in the world. So, yeah, that's going to be Kennedy. Federal government must lead in areas of technology, foreign relations, human rights. And looking at the next one, so parallelism, repetition of key words, strong patriotic language. Roosevelt, Kennedy, or both?
Both.
Both, yes, right? We talked about parallelism, right? They both use that kind of rhythmic, it appeals to their pride, it appeals to our pride, repetitive phrases. Roosevelt uses them as well. And they're both talking about patriotism, or, in different ways, but they are kind of using that strong language. All right, so both for style.
If we're doing the
long range purpose. So to be elected president, Roosevelt, Kennedy, or both?
They had an existing MPL and they were adding like a purpose and we needed to do mapping for that. Did we have to go for a whole
So it's
MPL
both,
process
right?
that had mapping?
Because it's their nomination address. So think about, where is the source coming from? What's the purpose of their, speech in this case, right? They're planning on being, or they're attempting to be elected as president. Of course, we know that they both are, but that is the idea, right? That's the long range purpose here, is to get nominated for, or I'm sorry, get elected as president. Solution to current problems. Is that Roosevelt, Kennedy, or both?
Okay.
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt, yeah, solution to current, right? There is a sense of urgency during the Great Depression that things needed fixed. Kennedy, looking to the future, right? Roosevelt, more of a sense of urgency about the present. Strong, stirring language. Roosevelt, Kennedy, or both?
Both.
Both, right? And I mean, that's going to be pretty characteristic
Yeah, it
of
does,
a
it does.
nomination
That
address,
was
right? This is their
thought that occurred to me.
first time as speaking
Going
as the
back to what Lisa
candidate
was
for
saying
their
earlier,
party.
I know
And
one
you want to
time
lead, with your strong
had a
foot, right? So you're
lawyer
going to, use stirring language. You're trying to whip
basically
everybody up and get
find
excited
votes.
for the
So he
election,
did all of his billing,
get boots on the
his
ground,
salary,
working for you and all of that.
handled
So you're going to see
the
strong
taxes
language
and
there.
when we really have
Um,
like a smaller
Media
one-off
purpose
like
again.
that,
So to
that's
persuade
the
audience
way
to
to go.
support candidate and ideas. Roosevelt, Kennedy, or both?
Both.
Yeah, that's going to be both, right? Persuade audience to support your ideas. Nomination address, just getting, trying to drum up support there. These are both supposed to be persuasive speeches. So both, and then
Yeah, that was
overall
the impression
impact.
I
So
got, 'cause
audience
when
is
I,
hopeful for end to
sourced the number
distress.
and dialed, the attorney was the one who answered the phone.
Which one's
And
that?
I told him what I was looking for and asked if there was.
Kennedy.
It's like you can talk to me.
This is
You know, and I really
Roosevelt,
got the
right?
impression that
He's
he was
thinking
doing
about
like
the
one-man
Great
show,
Depression,
so- and then,
bad
the
times,
other thing that I read in
especially if
the
you're comparing it to,
mediation
1932 to
was
1960.
a lot of larger
Bad
companies,
times
they
in the
don't
US
really
compared to 1960
have
when,
direct
things were fairly
contacts with,
good,
like,
at least
their
economically
accounts
speaking.
receivable
So
and
they're
the
looking for
numbers
that
that I was
immediate,
telling you
sort of
was
help and
routed
an
around
end to that
to,
distress of the
like
Great
auto
Depression.
insurance
And now tone, so forceful, optimistic, patriotic.
so
Is that Roosevelt,
some
Kennedy, or
larger
both?
companies are really hard, and some super small ones are hard.
Kennedy.
So it's actually both, right? They both are looking for, there is some optimism in both their words. If we look back at Roosevelt again. So, Roosevelt's kind of stressing that this can be done. So there's
Now,
hope there.
Some of the larger.
And then finally,
Hartford
last two,
and different things,
local
like
and federal
their
government must aid the
numbers
American
and
people in
times
times
by
of
sales
need.
numbers,
Roosevelt
And,
or Kennedy at this
when
point,
I
because I
called
think we filled in all the
he was
other ones.
asking, I need some.
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt, right? That idea of the Great Depression, we need public
USAA,
assistance, we
like
need the
auto
federal government to
insurance,
help.
like
And that leaves
someone
Kennedy,
being,
right?
like,
So audience is excited
they
about
try
new
to find
challenges,
somebody
which
for
is
me,
what
and they
Kennedy
would
is
direct
largely,
me, and then I would email them,
putting
like,
forth
home
there that,
insurance,
you
'cause
can,
those
we're
insurance
looking to
companies
the
do a lot of
future. We're
other
looking to be
things, and
pioneers
the numbers
in
that
the
they
coming
primarily have
decades.
out on their
So if we
website
submit,
are for those more consumer facing markets.
and yeah, so we all light up green there. Is everybody able to
So
get all those
any
answers?
guidance or better sourcing of information on those going forward would be very helpful.
All right, I'm gonna say that's a yes. So we'll submit there. Let's see what we got here. Oh, I'm gonna give Nilda a second here. Take a look. All right, just one sec. We're ahead of schedule today anyway, so no big rush. Working with the screen difficulty there too. Okay. That's okay. All right. So we'll go here. All right. And so now you get the idea, right? We're looking at, very similar, whether it's speeches or text, expository paragraphs, whatever it may be. And we have by comparing and contrasting, you can gain a better understanding of text, especially those in similar genres, just like we just did. So to begin, ask questions to identify each author's perspective and tone. What does each author think or feel about the main topic? And the reason they're writing is going to play a big part in that. If they're, just like that with nomination addresses, You're probably going to see more optimism. You're going to see energetic speeches with strong language. Build from your answers to find out each author's purpose. So given the author's perspective or tone, what is he or she trying to achieve? Go even further to analyze how each author tries to achieve his or her purpose. What technique does the author use? So an example, does the author use a certain text structure or style? And then finally, evaluate how the author's techniques help achieve his or her purpose. And now, again, some short passages here, and looking first off at the writers, Ronald Reagan, from A Time for Choosing, 1965. And we have LBJ about a year before talking about the Great Society, 1964. So let's read here, Reagan first. In this vote harvesting time, they use terms like the Great Society, or as we were told a few days ago by the president, we must accept a greater government activity in the affairs of the people. But they've been a little more explicit in the past and among themselves, and all of the things I now will quote have appeared in print. These are not Republican accusations, for example. They have voices that say the Cold War will end through our acceptance of a not undemocratic socialism, or our traditional system of individual freedom is incapable of solving the complex problems of the 20th century. All right, so that's Reagan. And what it says here, Reagan uses quotations representing opposing viewpoints to build a persuasive argument, thus supporting his own viewpoints. So those quotations, right, are, he is lifting language from something else. That's a quote, that's a direct quote from something that has appeared somewhere else. And he's doing that. It's like, this is their own words about, what their intentions are. So then the Great Society, this is LBJ. The Great Society is a place where every child can find knowledge to enrich his mind and to enlarge his talents. It is a place where the city of man serves not only the needs of the body and the demands of commerce, but the desire for beauty and the hunger for community. It is a place where man can renew contact with nature. It is a place which honors creation for its own sake and for what it adds to the understanding of the race. Right? Once again, that's LBJ in 1964. And here it says Johnson uses the repetition of "it is a place" to emphasize his viewpoint about the Great Society, right? And just a couple other things to point out when you look at Reagan at the top, he says, in this vote harvesting time, right? So in an election year, or, with that coming up, vote harvesting, trying to collect votes, that's a very, very intentional choice of words that people are trying to, sway voters. All right, so let's take a look here at the workbook then. All right, our same passages. And here, so it says when answering multiple choice questions, use evidence in the passages to eliminate or support answer choices, right? It's always talking about process of elimination. Ask yourself, which words in the passage prove this answer is correct, which prove it is incorrect. And with that in mind, how about Etta? Do you mind reading question 1?
Okay, which statement best expresses each author's perspective about the term Great Society? A, Reagan believes it represents an intrusive government, but Johnson believes it represents an engaged, supportive community. B, Reagan believes it represents individual freedom, but Johnson believes it represents the importance of small businesses. C, Reagan believes it represents Republican ideals, but Johnson believes it promotes self-reliance. Or D, Reagan believes it represents the dangers of the Cold War, but Johnson believes it represents community pride. Is it A?
Yeah. So, prior knowledge helps there too, right? So what we know about Ronald Reagan, in 1965, he was getting ready to start his political career. He was elected governor of California in 67. I think he served he served from 67 to 75, right, as governor of California. He was a Republican, he was conservative. And so, thinking about the ideas that go with that party, limited government, right? Not a big intrusion into, the citizen's life and things like that. Limited spending on federal programs and such. Johnson, Democrat. We've talked about some of those, programs and stuff. Great Society, Head Start, right, was one of those programs that came out of the Great Society legislation. Democrat. So, comparing, of course, he's talking about Johnson's programs in that. And the idea there, you can infer even just by knowing those two individuals and their sort of ideas about politics, that Reagan is likely to think that those programs are intrusive government. That's big government, right? We hear that word a lot. That's big government. So 1 is A. 2
It's a new passage.
is new passage. Let's go with Grace. Would you read the first passage for us?
You can raise.
Grace. Yeah. She's there.
Oh, I was on mute.
I'd do that too.
Okay. A time for choosing. And Senator Clark of Pennsylvania, another articulate spokesman, defines liberalism as meeting the material needs of the masses through the full power of centralized governments. Well, I, for one, resent it when a representative of the people refers to you and me, the free men and women of this country, as the masses. This is a term we haven't applied to ourselves in America. But beyond that, the full power of centralized government. This was the very thing the founding fathers sought to minimize. They knew that government don't control things. A government cannot control the economy without controlling people. They also knew, those founding fathers, that outside of its legitimate functions, government does nothing as well or as economically as the private sector of the economy. Now, we have no better example of this than government's involvement in the farm economy over the last 30 years, since 1955. The cost of this program has nearly doubled. 1/4 of farming in America is responsible for 85% of the farm surplus. You see, that 1/4 of farming that is regulated and controlled by the federal government.
All right. And I'll read the Great Society part here. So back to LBJ, right? Talk about the Great Society. So, but most of all, the Great Society is not a safe harbor, a resting place, a final objective, a finished work. It is a challenge constantly renewed, beckoning us toward a destiny where the meaning of our lives matches the marvelous products of our labor. So I want to talk to you today about 3 places where we began to build the Great Society: in our cities, in our countryside, and in our classrooms. The solution to these problems does not rest on a massive program in Washington, nor can it rely slowly on the strained resources of local authority. They require us to create new concepts of cooperation, a creative federalism between the national capital and the leaders of local communities. So, all right, looking at our question then, how about Christiana, would you read question 2 for us? Christiana, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Number 2. It says, What is the purpose of, is it Reagan's
Reagan, yep.
speech? Okay, so A, to inform his audience about basic economic principles. B, to persuade his audience that more government oversight is needed in the farming industry. C, to inform his audience about different opinions for governance. And D, to persuade his audience that a big government creates more problem than solution. Is it B?
D, yeah, to persuade his audience that a big government creates more problems than solutions. So yeah, that's the idea, right? When he talks about our founding fathers and their ideas of government. But he's making a generalization there, right? We could talk about that when he talks about our founding fathers as a group. Well, those men had very different ideas of government, right? Talked about that. But he's kind of using a generalization. But at the end of the day, he is sort of making this idea that, we don't need more government in our lives. Okay. And then number 3, let's see, Nilda, could you read number 3 for us?
Yes, paragraph 3 of Reagan's speech supports his purpose by A, providing an example of an effective government program. B, providing an example of a problem created by the government. C, explaining how government policies reflect economic principles. D, explaining the difficulties that farmers counters. B.
B, yeah, B as in boy, right? So if we look, right, so like he says, now we have no better example of this than government's involvement in the farm economy, right? So that's his example, the use of subsidies and things like that. So government regulation or intrusion into agriculture and farming. B, right? That's providing an example there. And then again, same passages. Let's see, Tracy, could you read number 4?
Yes. Paragraph 1 shows how Johnson's style helps achieve his purpose. Johnson uses A, figurative language to persuade. B, concrete example to inform. C, simple direct language to inform. D, inform language to persuade. B.
So it's A, figurative language, right? Figuratively speaking. A safe harbor, right? That's a figure of speech. So the Great Society is not a safe harbor, a resting place, a final objective. It's a finished work, or a finished work, right? So it's a challenge constantly renewed. So talking figuratively about what the Great Society means, toward a destiny. That's the idea of figurative language, right? Figuratively speaking, comparing it to something that's a lot different. So 4 is A, as opposed to literal. And 5, same 2 passages again. Etta, how about reading number 5?
Okay, which statement best reflects a difference in the author's tones? A, Reagan's tone is sentimental, but Johnson's is joyful. B, Reagan's tone shows indifferences, but Johnson shows pride. C, Reagan's tone shows criticism, but Johnson shows optimism. And D, Reagan's tone is mournful, but Johnson's is ironic. C.
Yeah. right? I mean, Reagan is very critical of big government, right? He points out, he uses the farming economy as an example. He's very critical of the idea of bigger government. But Johnson, on the other hand, is optimistic through those programs, through the Great Society, just in the name. You think about it, that's a positive sort of optimistic idea that he wants to convey there. And 6. So let's go to Christiana. How about number 6 for us?
Please, which number?
Number 6.
Oh, okay, number 6. Says that. Oh God. With which statement would both authors most likely agree? A, the private sector is more efficient than the government. B, local government should take over most responsibilities of the federal government. C, the federal government should not regulate industry. D, the American people do not need another big federal program. Is it B?
It's D, and it's more of a process of elimination on this one. Johnson doesn't really say that, this is one way or the other about a big government program, but you can eliminate. So the private sector is more efficient than the government. Johnson doesn't, really indicate that at all. And I mean, Reagan, you can kind of imply that, but it doesn't necessarily state that. Local government should take over most responsibilities of the federal government. That is not, anything mentioned here. That's not what the feeling you get from Johnson. And then the federal government should not regulate industry. That's kind of, out of bounds of what we're talking about here. But again, that's something that, you don't necessarily see with Johnson. And that sort of leaves, this idea that the American people do not need another big federal program. So D is in dog there for 6. And all right, sticking with, oh, wait, nope, that's a new passage. 2 new passages here. Let's see, Tracy, could you read the first passage here about on the grid?
Okay. The first paragraph.
Just go ahead and read the whole thing.
Okay. On the grid, a grid-connected system allows you to power your home or small business with renewable energy during those periods, daily as well as seasonally. When the sun is shining, the water is running, or the wind is blowing. Any excess electricity you produce is fed back into the grid. When renewable resources are unavailable, electricity from the grid supplies your needs, eliminating the expense of electricity storage device like batteries. In additional power providers, i.e. electric utilities in most states allow net metering, an arrangement where the exact electricity generated by grid-connected renewable energy system turns back your electricity meter as it is fed back into the grid. If you use more electricity than your system feeds into the grid during a given month, You pay your power provider only for the difference between what you use and what you produced. Some of the things you need to know when thinking about connecting your home energy system to electric grid include A. Equipment required to connect your system to the grid. B. The grid connection requirements from your power provider. C. State and community codes and requirements. Number 4. Aside from the major small renewable energy system components, you will need to purchase some additional equipment called balance of system in order to safely transmit electricity to your loads and comply with your power provider's grid connection requirements. You may need to the following items. A. Power conditioning equipment. B. Safety equipment. C. Methods and instrumentation. 5. Because grid connection requirements vary, you or your system supplier installer should contact your power provider to learn about its specific grid connection requirements before purchasing any part of your renewable energy system.
All right. Yeah, and that's from the energy.gov. That's right. So that's .gov, a government site, article Grid Connected Renewable Energy Systems from 2013. And one of the things we're kind of talking about there, which is interesting, if you're, let's say you have a solar power, you have solar panels, and maybe you have like some type of little wind turbine, however it may be that you generate electricity for your own home. If you have this equipment, and what they're saying here, you can actually, your meter will actually run backwards if you start generating enough electricity for yourself that you actually put energy back into the grid system. So you can actually, and theoretically, I don't know how many people actually, have been successful at doing this. The electric company will have to wind up paying you. So if you generate electricity back into the grid system and your meter is running backwards, then the power company will have to pay you the difference, which is kind of funny. And again, that takes a lot of home, equipment to do, but it is kind of what they're saying here. And yeah, it's kind of a neat thing, but it's, not easy to do. We'll put it to you that way. But let's take a look here and see what we got. How about we go with Grace? Would you read question 7 for us?
Okay. In paragraph 2 of the first passage, the signal word "but" indicates that the author is providing evidence that stand alone renewable energy systems appeal also to those living near an energy grid. B, disagrees with the traditional practice of obtaining energy from a power provider. C, is suggesting that independence and environmental concerns are not cost effective. And D, agrees that extending power lines to energy grids is too costly for average consumers. A.
Yep. 7 is A, right? If we just look at that real quick, paragraph 2. So, in addition, power in most states allowing metering and by generating grid. Let's see. Where is that? I missed it somewhere. It did say paragraph 2, right? Oh, wait. We have 2 different sections here. Did we read both of those? Or just one? I think we just read the one, didn't we?
Yeah.
We just
Okay.
read off the grid. We didn't read on the grid.
Ah, well, they're both off the grid. Okay, we read on the grid. We didn't read off the grid. Okay, let me read that real quick. I was like, what happened? Those kind of confused me there because they're set up, their format is really the same. Okay, anyway, let me read that real quick. So for many people powering their homes or small businesses, using a small renewable energy system that is not connected to the electricity grid, called a standalone system, makes economic sense and appeals to the environmental values. In remote locations, standalone systems can be more cost-effective than extending a power line to the electricity grid, the cost of which can range from $15,000 to $50,000 per mile. There's the but. But these systems are used also by people who live near the grid and wish to obtain independence from the power provider or demonstrate a commitment to non-polluting energy sources. Successful standalone systems generally take advantage of a combination of techniques and technologies to generate reliable power, reduce cost, and minimize inconvenience. Some of these strategies include using fossil fuel or renewable hybrid systems and reducing the amount of electricity required to meet your needs. In addition to purchasing photovoltaic panels, right, that's, solar panels, a wind turbine, or a small hydropower system, you will need to invest in some additional equipment called balance of system to condition and safely transmit the electricity to the load that will use it. This equipment can include batteries, charge controller, power conditioning equipment, safety equipment, meters, and instrumentation. So that is from the energy.gov article, Off-Grid or Standalone Renewable Energy Systems, Access 2013. And the second article from the same site was Grid Connected Renewable Energy Systems, right? So really, from the same site, talking about the same issues here from a little bit of a different source. But yeah, so providing evidence that a standalone renewable energy system appeal also to those living near an energy grid. Yeah, so that's A. So it could be either people that, are, living in a rural community or, have a small business, something like that, or, people that have adequate supply and adequate access. 7 is A. 8. I know it's so funny because I looked at that and I thought, oh, okay, there's 2 there. And then when we started reading, I was just way too far down on the screen. How about Ada, would you like to read number 8?
Okay, number 8. What is the author's perspective in the first passage? The author believes that standalone renewable energy systems, A, are costly and inconvenient, B, are underrated and should be used more, C, have potential but are still unreliable, or D, can be beneficial to anyone. So have potential but are still unreliable.
So D, basically they could be benefit anyone. And that comes into play with that first question, right? With that statement of but, it's beneficial for this, but it could also be beneficial for this group over here. So 8 is D. All right, and 9, let's go with Nilda. Would you read number 9 for us?
Yes. What is the purpose of the first passage? A, to persuade readers to switch to a standalone renewable energy systems. B, to inform readers about the standalone renewable energy systems. C, to persuade readers in remote locations to extend power lines to energy grids. D, to inform readers how to reduce energy and cost and minimize inconvenience. To go to first passage. Okay. C.
So it's B. basically sort of an introduction and, showing readers, what they are, right? So in both cases, the second passage is, it says a grid connected system allows you to power your home or small business with renewable energy during those periods, daily as well as seasonally, when the sun is shining, water running, so forth and so on. And then one also, for many people, powering their home or small business using a small renewable energy system that is not connected to the electricity grid, called a standalone system, makes economic sense and appeals to the environment. Right, same idea there to inform readers what those are. So 9 is B. 10, same stuff. Let's go to Christiana. How about reading 10 for us? Okay, let's try Grace. How about you read 10 for us?
Okay. What is the purpose of the second passage? A, to inform readers of the grid connection requirements of most power providers. B, to persuade readers to switch to grid connected renewable energy systems. C, to inform readers about grid connected renewable energy systems. And D, to persuade readers to feed their energy from renewable energy systems back into the grid. D.
C. So think about the titles too: off the grid, on the grid. So they're both about renewable energy, like home energy systems, right? That's the idea behind both passages. That's the genre they're in, and they're coming from the same website. But one is talking about using them just as a standalone system, and the second one is talking about like it says, on the grid, connecting that back to a larger electrical grid system, and the fact that you can basically supply energy back into that system that way. 10 is C, and the same passage here for 11. Let's see, Tracy, would you read 11?
Yes. How are both authors' perspectives similar? A, both agree that consumers can switch to renewable energy systems themselves. B, both recognize the cost and inconvenience of switching to renewable energy system. C, both believe that standalone systems are better than grid-connected systems. D, both agree that renewable energy system helps save energy, money, and the environment. B.
D. So, they both are pointing out there that a renewable energy system, it says it can, save energy, money, and the environment, eliminating those other answers. So both agree that consumers can switch to renewable energy systems themselves. Doesn't really say that, it does point out that, there could be some difficulty if you're trying to do something like that. Second one, both recognize the cost and inconvenience of switching to renewable energy systems. They don't mention cost necessarily. They barely, kind of vaguely talk about that. But the second one more, just points out what you would need. And then both believe that standalone systems are better than grid connected systems. That neither one of those really state that. So that leaves D for us with 11. And continuing with on the grid, off the grid. Let's see here. Etta, could you read number 12?
Okay. How do the passages differ in scope? A, the second passage addresses energy systems that obtain power with and without a grid connection. The first passage does not. B, the first passage discusses energy systems that are environmentally friendly. The second passage does not. C, the second passage lists what consumers need to purchase for a renewable energy system. The first passage does not. Or D, the first passage explains when using the renewable energy system makes sense. The second passage does not. Is it A?
Yeah, right. That's really goes to the second passage there, right? It's talking about connecting a system and it's talking about an independent system there. First passage only talking about an independent off the grid system. 12 is A. 13, same passage again. Nilda, would you like to read 13?
Yes, both authors achieve their overall impact in part by using an aggressive tone and cautionary language, B, a straightforward language and logical evidence, C, emotional appears and figurative language, D, relevant anecdotes about renewable energy, B.
Yep, B, right? It's kind of fact based. It's talking about logically. Hey, in the long run, this could save you money. It's ecologically sound. It's very rational and reasonable, right? It's not aggressive. It's not cautionary. It's like, if you don't do this, you're going to die. We're going to destroy the planet, or emotional and figurative, same kind of thing, right? And anecdotal, they don't talk about, well, I know this dude over here that did it, all this. So yeah, it's just simple, straightforward kind of idea there. So B for 13. And then 14, yeah, it looks like we're going to finish out with the same passage. So 14, how about Grace? How about reading 14 for us?
All right. Which is the most likely conclusion to draw about the authors of the passage? A, the authors have standalone renewable energy systems in their own homes and businesses. B, the authors are government contractors who design non-polluting energy systems. C, the authors will recommend a renewable energy system to the owner of a small business. And D, the authors are technicians who install energy systems for power companies. Is it A?
No, it's C,
C.
right? So they would definitely, recommend that to a small business owner. The other ones, yeah, they don't mention their own homes, whether or not that would also be somewhat anecdotal. B, the authors are government contractors. I mean, they're writing on a government website, but we don't really know, who they're employed by or anything else. And we don't even have their names. So we don't know, we can't say that for sure. And then finally on D, the authors are technicians who install energy systems for power companies. We don't know that either, right? The only thing that we could really draw a conclusion about there is that they would probably, recommend it because they do mention small businesses here, and that's something that we can draw on from the passage themselves. The other ones we'd have to really kind of make, kind of reach out there beyond what the text says to make those conclusions. And then there's the last one. How about Nilda? We'll go back to you for 15. We'll finish out here.
Okay. On the basis of the information in both passages, a grid-connected system would be the best choice for a homeowner who A, cares deeply about the environment, B, lives in a great distance from a city or town, C, resents dealing with power companies, D, is frugal and experiences predictable reasons, C.
So D in this case, all those could potentially, apply, but we hear more in both of the passages about the idea of, saving money, the idea of cost saving. So, cost effective, economically, prudent, stuff like that in there. So that leaves D as in dog for 15. Okay, and do I need to follow up with any of those answers? Everybody get everything? All good? Okay. So, yeah, just another idea of comparing and contrasting, of looking at style. These are all, again, I think when we get to, the writing prompts, you'll see where this will be important because